Gretsch drum business in the United States, really important starting date is 1872. 1872 is the day that my great-grandfather, or is the year that my great-grandfather arrived in New York. 16-year-old immigrant from Germany, came to live with family in Brooklyn. And of course he had to get a job, and ends up getting a job at the Houdet Drum and Banjo Company, and he apprentices for 10 years or more, learning how to make drums and banjos. 1883, they opened the Fred Gretsch Manufacturing Company in Brooklyn. My grandfather first took me to the business in 1951 in Brooklyn, in a building at 60 Broadway, 10-story building that he built, completed it in 1916 with his mom and his younger brother. And we were making, at that point, on the 7th floor, we were making Gretsch drums and Gretsch guitars. They set me up on a bench putting together drum parts, and I remember that very clearly. I enjoyed, on days off from school and on Saturdays, going down there and hanging out with the craftsmen, doing some things in the shop and learning about the business. Started in '65 full-time in the factory in Brooklyn, working in the engineering department. At that point in time, it was a year after the Beatles had played the Ed Sullivan Show. The baby boom generation was teenagers. They were into rock and roll. They wanted to play music, and playing Gretsch drums and Gretsch guitars was high on their list. Gretsch was fortunate that we were in New York City, and New York City was the media capital of the world. And here we were across the river in Brooklyn, and able to go back and forth and work with those artists. And Harry Volpe, a recording artist of the late 30s on radio and 40s as well, was one of those on WOR radio. And so when Django Reinhardt came to town, Django did the show and got some Gretsch guitars and ended up playing them. Just bringing drums into the modern era from the era of the marching bands. No one sat down to sit to play drums as a drum set probably until 1918. And then fast forward 1932, the Rockefellers in Rockefeller Plaza opened Radio City Music Hall, and a fellow by the name of Billy Gladstone is principal percussionist there at Radio City Music Hall. He'd visit us across the river. He was a very inventive type artist and designed some wonderful snare drums along with Gretsch. And anyone that has a Billy Gladstone snare drum from the 30s or 40s or early 50s has got a rare and valuable piece indeed. The players playing jazz were happy to come to the Gretsch factory and visit where we were making drums. We had a chance to partner with early jazz artists. We signed up all of the great jazz drummers of the time. Fortunate for us, they were playing in New York. The Gretsch family business was sold in '67. I was very disappointed when it was sold. 1984, we had a chance to buy the business back then. It took me 17 years to do it. Enter the rock and roll era, and here we were the acknowledged leader in the drum business when it came to jazz, and the rock and roll business took everybody by surprise. Fellows like Charlie Watts, what a great player, and not too many people realize he's a great jazz drummer. He's associated with the Stones. We're very proud of the fact that he plays Gretsch drums. Vinnie Colaiuta and Steve Ferroni had a longer career, first with the Average White Band. Chet Atkins was an acknowledged, wonderful, terrific player of the time, and I know George Harrison picked up his Gretsch, certainly because of Chet. And we signed Chet as an artist in 1954. He was with Gretsch for 25 years till 1979, and I set a goal to get Chet's endorsement back. Unfortunately, it wasn't done in his lifetime. It was done through the good work of our friends at Fender, and it took 22 years to get Chet back. When I worked the summer of '58 is the year that Bo Diddley came in as a young dude out of Brooklyn, asked us to make these unusual shaped guitars. I think back, my uncle, Fred Gretsch Jr., was running the business in that year. In that year, he was 53 years old. and I have to credit the fact that he was forward-looking enough, along with his artist guy Jimmy Webster, to say, yeah, these are unusual ideas. No one's ever built a rectangular guitar or a guitar in these shapes. And in 1988, we had a chance to work with George Harrison and get together the Wilbury guitar and meet the rest of the Wilburys. And it was always fun to talk to George, and what a gentleman that he was. And he had a soft spot in his heart. We last saw Billy Gibbons back in the spring on his tour with ZZ Top.
A somewhat unusual instrument that was given to me by Bo Diddley back in the day. This is probably one of the most comfortable, playable pieces of modern guitar jewelry that you could ever want. The Gretsch Billy Bow.
And had a chance to visit with Billy, both of these are signed Gretsch artists, and we're doing signature models. The work we did with Brian Setzer, signing Brian Setzer as an artist in 1993, Patrick Stump with Fall Out Boy. We introduced a new model, Patrick Stump model guitar at the NAMM show this year, January 2009, and it was great to have Patrick there. He's such to me, a young player, very enthusiastic. But I'll tell you, it's as much fun to meet the guys who play them because they love them and don't do endorsements like Jack White. Jack White and the Raconteurs. And we met Jack for the first time. And it was so much fun to meet a guy who was really enthusiastic about his Gretsch instruments and about his sound. The whole show, he played nothing but Gretsch. Whether he did that because Mr. and Mrs. Gretsch were in the audience or not, I'm sure it was in his heart as well. Got to meet Mark Schulman for the first time, and he's an important new artist that's very active with Gretsch. Cindy Blackman is another one that we've gotten close to over the years. We're very proud of Rob Borden with Linkin Park and Taylor Hawkins with Foo Fighters. We continue to add lots of young players. We're very proud when we hear people say that the instruments that we're making today are great sounding instruments, because that's our goal, to make the instruments better and better all the time, at the same time being faithful to the original recipes, whether it's on the drum side or whether it's on the guitar side. They're key materials that are part of a Gretsch instrument. Maple is a key component on the drum side and the guitar side. Rosewood and ebony, the pickups that go into a guitar and the windings and the magnets that are used. On the drum side, the die-cast rims and the die-cast lugs and other parts, all key elements of the Gretsch sound that we maintain today with an eye towards creating an instrument that's worth keeping for a lifetime.